Channel 2 investigation has found that the Chicago Housing Authority wasted millions of dollars on low-income housing that was never finished. It was part of a court-ordered program to de-emphasize high-rise projects and instead fix up smaller buildings on sites scattered throughout the city. But the Channel 2 investigative team has found that the CHA has turned scattered sites into scattered slums. Tonight, Pam Zeckman reports on why the largest contracts awarded in the program have become the CHA's biggest failures.
This is the only heat in Edna Warfield's South Side apartment. Conditions are so bad that she and her 3 children desperately want to move into public housing. They're among thousands of families on the waiting list.
All I want is some heat. I am tired of being cold.
Each night, the family goes to sleep afraid that their apartment will catch on fire.
I hope to God the stove or nothing don't explode while we laying up there sleep. If anybody got any kind of building out there, if they got an apartment that I can pay, let me know. Please.
About a mile away from the Warfields, these CHA row houses have been sitting vacant and boarded up for years. They're part of 2 contracts to build or renovate 234 apartments scattered around the city, homes that poor people could be living in. Most of the apartments were never finished, and the $8 million budget is now gone. CHA records show that one reason why the money's gone is the agency paid for work that was not done. In this 6-flat, the agency paid $2,000 for new hardware. It was never installed. Paid $3,000 for all the plastering. It was not all done. Paid $10,000 for rough carpentry. It wasn't finished. In fact, work in 2 of the 6 apartments was never even started. The contractor was Gerald Cantor, president of Industrial Structures Incorporated, ISI. Cantor was hired by the CHA despite his bad track record with the agency. In 1981, the CHA staff said the quality of his previous work was very unsatisfactory. They would not recommend hiring the company again. But 4 months later, the CHA hired Cantor anyway. They gave him the scattered sites contract because Cantor was the low bidder. Now the CHA is trying to undo the damage. Here, the circuit breaker panel was installed without a cover, leaving live wires exposed. At other buildings, electrical outlets were not properly installed. And at this building, the electrician used the wrong wire. It's not heavy enough for the current.
It's just sloppy workmanship, carelessness.
That can result in what?
Well, it can result in the fire and the loss of property and, more important, the loss of life.
In several buildings, the plumbers damaged important support beams when they cut them to install pipes. The CHA later hired another contractor to repair the weakened beams. In this apartment, the tenants have to use kerosene heaters to stay warm. Cold air blows in through gaps in the walls, and the back door doesn't fit properly. You can see daylight where there's a big space. An important vent for the furnace was supposed to be installed in this hallway, but the contractor put it in a bedroom where it's blocked by the door.
It's very cold in here. Like I said, we all have to stay in one room, to keep warm.
The contractor, Gerald Cantor, says the construction problems were the result of poor planning by the CHA. He says if the CHA had any complaints about the quality of the work, they should have notified him. And he denies getting paid for work that was not done.
The only thing that we were paid is for the work that CHA inspectors approved.
Our investigation found that this construction project was doomed from the beginning. The plans drawn by CHA architects were often incomplete and led to cost overruns. Sometimes the blueprints even called for work that violated city building codes. Take this one building, for example. There was no provision to comply with the fire code when the enclosed back porch was made into a bedroom. The building's main plumbing line was too small to provide enough water, and the plans called for glass blocks in the basement windows. Building inspectors say they seal the room so tightly that it can cut off air needed for the safe operation of the furnace.
The problem is that the people will be asphyxiated with carbon monoxide poisoning.
By August of '84, the CHA had spent 3/4 of the budget, but only 1/4 of the apartments were finished. The CHA canceled its contract with ISI, but the problems got even worse. Most of the buildings just sat for a year and a half while vandals and thieves went to work. Stolen here, all the fixtures from the bathrooms and kitchens. Stolen, $4,000 worth of copper pipe, nearly $7,000 worth of doors, and $10,000 worth of heating ducts and furnaces. The CHA says it will cost $30,000 to redo the walls and floors damaged by the lack of heat and the snow that comes in through broken windows. The building was 90% finished a year and a half ago. The CHA has already paid the contractor $217,000. Now the CHA says it will cost another $226,000 to finish the job. And while the buildings sit vacant, the CHA is still paying interest on the money it borrowed for the construction. Interest alone is $6,000 a day, $4.5 million that could have been used for construction, lost because of delays by the CHA. The CHA is now working on a few of the buildings, but says it needs $16 million more from the federal government to finish the job. The request is being reviewed in Washington. CHA officials refuse to comment about industrial structures because of pending lawsuits.
Chicago Housing Authority has wasted nearly $750,000 on apartment buildings that now have to be demolished. They were supposed to have been remodeled for low-income families as part of the court-ordered plan known as the Scattered Site Program, but it hasn't worked out that way. The Channel 2 investigative team found that because of the delays by the CHA, many of the buildings deteriorated so badly they turned into scattered slums. And as Pam Zeckman reports, there is nothing left to do but wreck them.
These are the remains of an apartment building that was supposed to be renovated for low-income families by the Chicago Housing Authority. It's one of 6 buildings the CHA has bought and then demolished, and a CHA official has recommended tearing down 6 more because it's not feasible to fix them up. The CHA bought this building in 1981 for $47,000. 22 families were evicted. Over the next 4 years, building inspectors witnessed brick stealers at work. They stole so many bricks, the building collapsed. Last August, the CHA paid another $6,000 to have the rubble hauled away. This building was demolished after the CHA had already begun to remodel it. Construction stopped after the builder found termites. For 2 years, the CHA could not decide what to do. Meanwhile, according to city records, the building was ravaged by brick stealers. They literally stole the building out from under the CHA. Walls collapsed on a power line. It terrified the neighbors.
And the wires fell down and the posts caught on fire, and if I was standing on the back porch, I'd have got killed, electrocuted.
A judge finally ordered the lot cleared. Now the neighbors use it to grow vegetables. It cost $50,000 to buy the building, $15,000 to relocate the families, $52,000 for administrative costs, $100,000 to remodel it, and $8,000 to demolish it. That's $225,000 for a vegetable garden.
That's terrible. That is terrible, to have to spend all that money and not get nothing out of it. And all these people that need homes, they really need homes around here. In this neighborhood, terrible. I mean, there ain't nobody here that don't need a home.
The CHA bought this building in 1980 for $43,000. 8 families were moved out. Empty, the building began to fall apart, creating hazardous conditions. A CHA employee warned in this memo that the front balcony was about to collapse, a hazard to the local winos who drink there. She said they might end up dead or rich from a lawsuit. The CHA spent nearly $3,000 to take down the balconies and $6,000 more on maintenance. Now the staff is recommending that the entire building be torn down.
The Scattered Site public housing program in Chicago is in shambles.
Professor Ed Marciniak was appointed by a federal judge to study the Scattered Sites program. He concluded that the program has been so poorly run that it actually hurts the people it's supposed to help.
The poor and low-income families are suffering, and the supply of housing decreases because they kick these families out and left the buildings empty.
The empty buildings also hurt entire neighborhoods. The CHA bought this building in 1981. Here it is now, after fire and heavy vandalism. The CHA's original estimate to rehab the building was $278,000. Now the estimate is nearly $1 million.
It's awful, because CHA could have did much better if they had tried, but they didn't try.
Members of the block club say the building has attracted muggers, rapists, and rats. A judge in housing court ruled the building is dangerous. He's ordered the CHA to tear it down.
They are slumlords, worse than slumlords. They are not really lords. They own the property, but they are bringing the entire neighborhood down.
They're also wasting money. When you add up all the costs for acquisition and relocation, some construction and demolition, the CHA has spent at least $750,000 on buildings that have to be demolished. CHA Commissioner Leon Finney says he hopes the CHA can make up for some of the damage to the neighborhoods by building new housing where old buildings were torn down.
Dozens of apartments in Chicago that were supposed to provide housing for low-income families are uninhabitable. And there are substandard conditions in dozens more that have been remodeled by the Chicago Housing Authority. The Channel 2 investigative team found many of the problems were created by architects hired by the CHA. The architects were working on a program to decentralize public housing by renovating homes on scattered sites throughout the city. But as Pam Zeckman reports, the scattered sites have become scattered slums.
This is one of 71 houses the CHA was supposed to remodel at a cost of $3 million. But the project ran out of money. Work in 12 of the buildings was never even started. And the CHA says half the ones that were finished still have major code violations.
My reaction to that is that's a terrible waste has occurred.
CHA Commissioner Leon Finney says the waste has hurt the people who need housing and the neighborhoods that are left with boarded-up eyesores.
And it's hurt our integrity as an organization that is committed to building and developing housing for the poor.
Our investigation traced many of the problems to outside architects hired by the CHA. Their mistakes led to huge cost overruns that helped bankrupt the program's limited budget. The architects worked for a firm called Archetype 3, formerly located here but no longer in business. Archetype 3 wrote specifications to tell the contractors what work to do, but builders told us the specs were inaccurate and incomplete.
Every one of our 16 buildings we ran into this problem. There is major things which were just overlooked.
Channel 2 found that in 10 buildings, the architects either miscalculated the size of roof repairs or failed to mention them at all. Why? The architects told us they did not have ladders to inspect the roofs. The result? Additional repairs cost the taxpayers $20,000 more than was originally planned. The architects also said they failed to inspect several basements because they could not get in. As a result, the builder here did $40,000 worth of work upstairs before he realized there was trouble downstairs, a weak foundation. This is one of the supports that hold up the house. The problem is they're resting on a dirt floor. It's too expensive to fix, so now the CHA wants to tear the building down. In several houses, the architects told the builder to connect new furnaces to the existing ductwork. But there were no existing ducts. Installing them cost an extra $15,000.
You don't have to be an architect, don't have to be an engineer. Just a person with common sense could spot many of these apparent difficulties.
There were other cost overruns because the architects forgot entire rooms. Here, the plans called for work on a 2-bedroom apartment, but in fact, there are 4 bedrooms. They also forgot to include doors and closets, so the family living here stores their clothes in boxes. The total cost overruns for this building were $44,000, 58% more than the original budget.
The cost was astronomical as compared to what it should have been originally. It's so absurd.
The CHA remodeled this house in 1984. Now the work is being redone, literally from top to bottom, inside and out. Archetype 3 says the building was structurally sound when they turned it over to the CHA. But the tenants say that as soon as they moved in, they noticed a deep crack in the support beam in the basement. There's also a 2-inch gap between the beam and the floor it's supposed to hold up. Reynold Hudson is deaf. He spoke to us through an interpreter.
The wood looks like it's ready to rot away, and we're afraid it looks dangerous to us, and we're afraid it might fall and we'll get killed.
The CHA also says the building needs insulation in the attic and new plumbing because the pipe that carries foul-smelling sewer gas out of the bathroom had been cut off. The CHA is even going to rebuild the front porch and put up aluminum siding. Now the budget is 3 times what was originally planned. The 2 men who manage the project for Archetype 3 are Lincoln Calhoun, who is not a licensed architect, and Charles Smith, an architect and partner in the firm. They refuse to be interviewed on camera, but off camera they blame most of the cost overruns on delays and mismanagement at the CHA. They said the agency did not give them enough time to write the plans and did not have enough money to do all the necessary construction. They also said contractors insisted on extra work that was not needed. Smith said Archetype 3's construction plans were never intended to be exact, but he also admitted that his office made some mistakes. On a project like this one, he said, everyone makes mistakes.
CHA officials admit they made a mistake buying some of the homes in the first place. They say these homes were already vacant, boarded up, and in bad shape when the CHA took them over from the federal government. Now the CHA says it needs more federal money to finish the job.
The Channel 2 investigative team has found the CHA has spent $10 million, that's money out of your pocket, on apartment buildings it can't afford to renovate. The CHA bought the buildings to meet court-ordered deadlines to provide low-income housing throughout the city. But now, as Pam Zeckman tells us in her final report, the scattered sites are becoming scattered slums.
I'm mad because my taxes are paying for this. It's not providing housing. It's not fixing up. I don't know what business CHA is in, but they're not providing housing for people. They're wasting money.
Members of the Sheridan Park Neighborhood Association are angry at the CHA for its lack of progress on this North Side building. The CHA bought it 3 years ago for $167,000. Now the CHA cannot afford to fix it up.
It's criminal to let this go on.
Our investigation found that CHA officials lied to the federal government about the true cost of renovating hundreds of apartments. The reason they lied was to get approval for buying the buildings. Now the CHA is stuck with vacant buildings it cannot afford to renovate.
The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has guidelines on how much federal money the CHA can spend to buy and renovate property. HUD will not approve a development if the cost is too high. So when the CHA wanted federal approval for the purchase of this building, it told HUD that renovation would cost about $93,000, and HUD approved the purchase. The CHA did not tell HUD that 3 different consultants had already said it would cost more, as much as $189,000. Here's another example. To get federal approval of this building, the CHA said renovation would cost $105,000. Again, HUD said okay, but the CHA's own consultants had already estimated that construction would cost nearly 3 times as much, $302,000.
If they knew, should they have shared that information with you?
I would think so, certainly. We want any housing authority, we want any developer to give us their best estimates of anything like this, the best information they have.
Last year, when the CHA wanted federal approval for 33 buildings, it submitted cost estimates that were obviously phony. The CHA said the cost of remodeling each 2-flat, regardless of its condition, was going to be nearly $72,000. Remodeling each of the 3 flats, no matter how much work had to be done, was said to cost nearly $108,000. The pattern was repeated with 4, 6, and 12-unit buildings. This is one of the 6 flats on the list. The CHA told HUD that renovation would cost about $213,000, but the CHA's consultants had already said it would cost more than twice that much, $485,000.
Are you concerned that you might have been misled on these estimates?
If they had information available to them and they purposely submitted some other information that would lead us to approve a project, sure, that would be of concern.
The CHA's executive director admits that the estimates he gave the federal government were not based on the surveys by architects. The estimates that were used disguised the fact that the program was way over budget, a problem he inherited from previous administrations.
As an administrator, I have to move the program. I cannot sit and say to HUD, I am not going to build another unit until you give me all the money, or you give me some special dispensation from the problems of the past.
The lies are now catching up with the CHA. Last summer, when the CHA wanted federal money to begin the renovation, it submitted these blueprints to HUD, showing all the work that needs to be done. And guess what? The renovation will cost $10 million more than the federal government will pay.
Now that HUD has the true costs, it's rejecting the CHA's plans, saying they excessively exceed even the cost of new construction.
Experience shows that it can be done for much less.
The federal guidelines allow an average of about $45,000 to buy and renovate each apartment. Now the CHA is telling HUD it will cost $70,000 for each apartment.
$70,000 per unit is not an acceptable cost to HUD.
CHA officials complain that HUD doesn't allow enough money for renovation, and while they lobby for more money, the CHA is trying to appease angry community groups by fixing up a few of the buildings. But officials admit they cannot begin to do them all, so they just sit, monuments to the CHA's inability to finish what it started.
The CHA, by stockpiling these units, violated a public trust to provide safe, sanitary, decent housing for low and moderate income families. And that is inexcusable.
The bottom line to all this is that the CHA has now stockpiled more than 450 apartments. And now, under pressure from the federal court, the CHA is planning to buy at least 200 more.